Good evening, everyone. Welcome to an episode of On Deck. I'm Russ Morgan, here with a special guest. Really happy to hear you, Evan Budrovich. Evan, I hope I got that right.
Bingo.
Evan, great to have you on. How we doing tonight?
Hey, really good. Seeing Bartolo Colon hit a home run in Petco just made me smile. That is one of the best moments in baseball. So that clip alone, I'm ready to go.
Okay, yeah, nice. I'm really happy to have you on. I'm going to let you introduce yourself. Look, as most people know, tune in. I love college baseball. I know it's really not too big outside the Southeast area. Love the MLB too, but college baseball is great. So to have you on, knowing what you know. Also, I told Warnstead, dude, you got a killer voice to be a play-by-play guy. It just cuts through. It's nice. But Evan, tell me a little bit about how your background, how you got into college sports.
Yeah, Russ, thank you so much. So I went to USC, which out in the West Coast is Southern California, not South Carolina, like they say down this way. I was a student there, did journalism as a major, and then moved out here to the East Coast to work in collegiate summer baseball. Did that for a couple of years. Those are like 60-game summer seasons, and I did game notes and media guides and, website stuff and called games. And the last 9 or 10 years now, I've been a part-time employee of a lot of schools in these general states. So North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia. And what ESPN does is they bring me on for contract work. And I'll call, like last week I was at Duke, Georgia Tech, calling that series for the ESPN app. And, throughout the year I do different sports, but this time of year it's baseball season. So there's always something going on. And as we'll talk about, that road to Omaha is fantastic. So my season's come to an end now. I kind of spend more time watching than calling these days, but there's always something exciting.
Well, I know they bring in the top of the line guns. I mean, not to say you're not. I'll see the clips on Instagram. I'm like, you're good, but they bring in the big heavy hitters now. It's like, oh, unfortunately, just like me, you didn't probably play Division I college baseball, so that's a struggle. They bring in the what's his name, the guy from Stanford and the McDonald, and they bring in the big guns, unfortunately, right now. But I lose my train of thought easily when I get going too. So, but you mentioned it there, college sports. I see your stuff. You're not just doing baseball. I see you out at softball games and volleyball. Speaking of that, fuck, I should go back. Excuse my language. What conferences do you usually cover, or is it just all over the Southeast?
Yeah, right now, kind of where I'm located, I'm in ACC country. The Sun Belt, which is pretty much up and down the Southeast, the American Conference, which has your Charlottes, your East Carolinas, your Rices, schools like that. And then a little bit in the SEC with South Carolina, but largely the conferences that are in the Carolina region. A lot of times teams will come down here. Like I cover a lot of Big Ten teams that play. They need spring break trips and play baseball weekends down this way. But yeah, a lot of schools from Tennessee, Carolina, South Carolina, then up to Virginia area for sure.
That's unbelievable. ACC baseball is great. It's no SEC baseball. I've told everybody. Obviously we met through our good buddy Joe, who you went to school with. We've known a long time. So and we're all college football fans. We're nuts, And I'm like, dude, do you think SEC football is nuts? You need to go watch SEC baseball. And I'm watching SEC baseball now where you have, University of Florida, who is, the runner-up last year as a 10 seed, or, Alabama, who's a 9 seed in the SEC, still in the, top 20. It's insane. But, it's no slouch with, the Americans really good. Sun Belt's got some good. There's some really good. East Carolina has historically been a very good program.
It's interesting for college baseball fans. The SEC's won the last 5 national titles. And not only have they won 5 straight, the opponent has been an SEC team in the national championship. So the last team to break that streak was Michigan, pre-COVID 2019, and their coach, Eric Bakich, gets poached by Clemson. So there really is a concentration of power in those ACC and SEC leagues that, football is on a similar trajectory, especially with this college football playoff. You see what the Big Ten can do. But I think as the years go on, those two leagues will kind of become the NFC and the AFC of college sports.
Yeah. I mean, in Michigan, definitely Michigan was there. But, I mean, even there was so many years where it was like, hey, FCC doesn't win, which doesn't happen much. It's still an SEC team in there. I remember, one little SC note. When I was scouting baseball, a couple MLB names, they were playing, SC was playing Oregon State. And so I went out, I'm like, I'm going to see Rutschman. I'm going to see Nick Madrigal. I'm going to see Stephen Kwan. Nick Madrigal was a freak in college. I see him hit a ball down the first base line, and he gets a stand-up triple. But going to SC, Lars Nootbaar comes up, who's the center fielder, obviously but center fielder for the Cardinals now, and he hits a home run up the top of the S at Data. I'm like, holy crap, that ball was hit the shit out of. But our network's predominantly in South Florida, so we got a lot of Hurricanes fans, so we can jump into the ACC, which produces some great MLB players too. Cam Smith just this year. But going in the ACC, I just started writing, dude. I was going at it. Moving to the ACC, which had Georgia Tech, who wasn't even in the top 25 last week. They end up winning the conference, so goes in that. Who do you kind of see pegged in that in the ACC that might be able to get that tournament, either maybe sneak a bid like we're seeing right now with Cal and Pitt, who, I'm sorry, Hurricanes fans just beat Miami yesterday.
Miami's back on the bubble, unfortunately. Yeah, to your larger point. In terms of ACC favorites, this league's had 4 different champions in 4 years, so there's parity to it. I really like what Florida State's doing. What that staff did at Notre Dame to get them to an NCAA tournament in a program you don't win a ton at Notre Dame. And then Coach Jarrett comes down to Florida State. They're back in the top 10. They actually lost a series to Carolina over the weekend, and they would have won the regular season if they won that series. But they have Jamie Arnold, maybe the best pitcher in the country. He'll be a first-round pick next year. Elite starting pitcher. He might have a Paul Skeens trajectory where in a couple years you see him in the big leagues. Like, that's how dominant he's been. And here's Florida State at what they finished in the league, 17-10, right? So even the best teams in that conference, no one's going to run away with this league. That's how competitive the ACC is. But I like Florida State, and I really like Clemson too. They play NC State later this week, and Clemson, we noted, they can swing it. Like, they're the best offense in this league. I don't know if their pitching get anybody out, but sometimes in a tournament setting, you can outslug people, and they're playing at a neutral site at the home of the Durham Bulls, which, of course, the movie's based out of, but it's a AAA club for the Rays. That ballpark's a hitter's paradise, and the weather's pretty good this week, so I don't think any game's going to be 2-1. I could see a lot of 10-8 kind of games.
Could you see? Right now we got Pittsburgh up 3-0 on Duke. We had Cal put up 13 and 14 runs today. Could you see in some way because we're both baseball. Baseball is not like a normal sport. It's all about getting hot at the right time. Could you see a team like Cal or Pitt make a run and win the ACC title and steal a bid from a team on the bubble such as Miami?
Well, the scary thing with Pittsburgh, their RPI's in the 50s. And if you're not familiar with college baseball, 64 teams get in. From an at-large standpoint, there's essentially 32 non-conference champions that can get into the tournament. With Pitt's RPI being in the 50s, if they keep winning in this tournament, they may not have to win the league to get in as one of the top 50 teams in the country. But to your larger point, Cal's interesting because teams that have gone from west to east have been awful in every sport, especially the ACC this year. Cal winning those first 2 games, like if you were to put betting lines on it, I think I saw they were plus 600 in the first game. They were plus 750 in the second game when they beat Wake Forest. Now they play the top-ranked team in Georgia Tech. And to your earlier question, like that rest versus rust argument, it really interesting because a team that's momentum, if I had to pick one of the two who I think can win the league, I actually like Cal's chances better. and only because Pitt has to play North Carolina or Florida State. And that side of the bracket's tougher than the top half. But, man, if Cal was able to win, the Calgorithm Twitter accounts would go nuts. Like those people are just wonky on social media. They'd have a blast.
I mean, it would be nuts because, like, going off the ACC, if you go to the Big Ten, which historically hasn't been like a great baseball conference, you see 4 out of the top 5. I mean, you got Oregon who's 1, UCLA who's 2, USC 4, and Washington 5. I'm like, just come in and, like, we're getting some, like, West Coast teams, like, enlightening, like, getting baseball. I mean, especially in the Big Ten, which hasn't been great, but I'm like, people are kind of getting to see, I'm like, West Coast baseball is for real. It's got some serious talent. It just doesn't have the following as it does in the ACC or the SEC. And Cal, Cal's a great story too, because they made the College World Series. They're going to lose their program, which was unbelievable. That was an unbelievable story.
I was in college that year in 2011, and Cal came to play USC and UCLA. So I went to a couple of the games, and their coaches, like in press conferences, were saying, if we don't raise $25 million, we have to cut 4 sports. Like they were literally in limbo of losing. They had lacrosse, they had baseball, they had a couple others, but all those sports would have been cut. And that trip to Omaha, they weren't even ranked going into the tournament, kind of like this year's team. They win their super regional, they go to Baylor and win 2 out of 3, and they literally resurfaced the program with fundraising. Like that's how fine these line items can be. And yeah, that season was amazing.
Well, unfortunately for me being a college baseball nut, but love college baseball. Baseball, because of Title IX, baseball is usually one of the first sports to go, because of Title IX. But let's jump into Miami. Obviously, they lost yesterday, which definitely hurts Miami's chances. Losing 12, getting just shellacked yesterday. But I mean, had some good wins. Swept Georgia Tech, took 2. I guess swept NC State because they had that rain out. So they have some good quality wins. Do you see there's still a path for them to get that at-large bid?
Absolutely. The challenge with a resume, and this is the same in college basketball, there's a lot of different factors that a committee looks at. The head of this year's committee is the athletic director at Southeast Louisiana, a school in the down there in Louisiana. But the point being, when they look at resumes, RPI, which is your record against opponents and your opponent's record against their opponents, it's a weird metric, but it makes sense when you see it. Miami has really good numbers from a resume standpoint. They have the great series wins, like you mentioned. Now, the thing with them is they've lost 3 straight series coming in. And you lose to Virginia, you lose to Notre Dame, and you lose in the conference tournament. 3 weeks ago, before that stretch, they were in contention to host because of sweeping Boston College. And you mentioned doing well against NC State. Like they were one of the hottest teams in the country, and how quickly it can change in 2 series when a team like Cal, for example, is probably going to, or Missouri starts the year 0-24 in the SEC, and then they sweep Texas A&M, and now A&M, like all these little moving pieces from Miami's at-large standpoint, they're in a good spot. They need to make sure that teams in the quote-unquote mid-major leagues that are the favorites win their conference. A lot of times, like in basketball, when the A10 in basketball is really good, and if St. Joseph's loses, that bubble berth gets stolen. That's kind of the case in the mid-majors. And if you're watching, you want to watch the American Conference Tournament, UTSA is a program that's the favorite. They'll make it regardless, at large or regular. You want them to win. You look at the Sun Belt Conference, Coastal Carolina, they're in Myrtle Beach. They're the favorite. They're going to probably host. So if they lose, they'll end up still making the tournament. There's a couple leagues like that. The CAA has Northeastern. Actually, Tom Glavin's brother is the head coach there, Mike Glavin. And, little things like that can change. But if you're watching for Miami's tournament case, you want all the favorites to win. That is the best news for Miami.
Yeah, Northeastern's insane this year. They're 45-9?
Yeah, 24 straight wins, which is, in baseball, that's unheard of.
And the CAA's, it's not bad. It's a good mid-major conference. I know UNC Wilmington's pretty good. My brother was in Wilmington, so he went out to a couple games. He's like, dude, this atmosphere is great. It's small, but it's a great atmosphere. small town, people follow the school. But I mean, so you're saying there is a path for the Canes to still make it, even that subpar performance right off the bat.
They have a win over Florida, which is important. And the tournament committee looks at your non-conference and your conference. They started slow. They were 0-6 to start the year in the conference. And a lot of teams can't recover from that. But then Miami won 10 games against ranked opponents. Their resume looks better than a team like Notre Dame. If you look at those two comparably, they're both on the bubble. Notre Dame did beat Miami in the series, so that matters a little bit. But Miami has better wins. I think they'll be sweating a little bit in Miami, which is always the case when it's sunny out there. But those milkshakes are really good at A-Rod Ballpark. I think as long as the committee, those winners keep winning, I don't see a scenario where Miami misses the tournament.
Are we thinking 2-3 seed now, probably?
Probably more in that 2 to 3 range, yeah, and most likely a 3 going to an SEC park. So I would think a Florida. I would think a who else is going to probably Georgia will be a top 10 national, somewhere in that spot.
Well, I know we spoke a little bit about this yesterday. What prospects do you see from University of Miami we could be seeing maybe in the MLB?
Yeah, Daniel Cuvée has 16 home runs. And in the college game, you play just over 50 games in a year. The record for home runs was actually broken last year by Jack Caglione of Florida. He had 32. But Chris Bryant, a name that a lot of baseball fans know, he set the record in 2010 at San Diego. Small school, but he hit 30 in a year. If you're hitting 20 plus, your power projects to the next level. Yeah. And to have 16 home runs at this point of the year, he's a multiple-time all-conference selection. He's got great hand-to-bat skills. And a lot of times in baseball, it's not just power, but, the wood transition from metal to wood. He's got all the tools of a first-round pick. If you're a fan of ACC baseball, that's a guy you're going to see his name called coming up in July.
Minus Jamie Arnold, who would have been a top 5 pick last year.
Oh, yeah. Hey, those pitchers, man, they can go anytime.
What are you, 6'4" lefty? I mean, the guy would have been people, I would have pulled if there wasn't a good surefire guy, because I like, being a scout, I like picking. I'm like, give me the college guys now. And we're definitely starting to see more college players have success in the pros. But I like that better. I'm like the high school guys, way long-term projection.
And think in the big leagues right now, there's a guy named Nick Kurtz for the Athletics, and he was at Wake Forest a year ago. He was on last year's regional team. Now he's it was the second fastest player in A's history to make it to the bigs. Like, these programs, especially MLB teams that don't want to pay their players, have a process to get these guys up to the bigs quickly. You see with Paul Skeens, you see with Nick Kurtz. There's an avenue for college players, maybe not that first year, but come that second year out of college, they could make the big league roster right away.
Talk about power. Nick Kurtz had some power at Wake Forest for sure. But, speaking of Chris Bryant, whose head coach was Jay Johnson, who's now at LSU, literally said, this is one of the best hitters I've ever coached. And I got when they went to UCLA and I got to see him, I'm like, I'm following him. I get there, I'm like, just give me a home run. And he goes like 1 for 4 with like a single. I'm like, dang, I wanted to see one of these. But it's pretty impressive that, Jay Johnson's a hell of a baseball coach. Very small.
To win a national title at 2 schools. That's a very short list of people who can say that,
Yeah, it's great. And I think baseball is probably the only sport where you could still be a first round pick or a high top 50 pick. You'll never sniff the amount of kids that get drafted in the top 50 will never sniff the MLB. First round pick. I thought Asa Lacy from Texas A&M was going to be a 1-2 stud, and he's never even panned out. So, baseball's just, it's crazy like that, where, in football, I'm like, at least you're a first round guy, or I guess we would say, round 1 or 2 guy, you're at least getting some time. You're getting a couple years to figure it out. Baseball, I'm like, go figure out in the minors. You might make it, you might not.
Yeah, but, it's not every year where you get an 2009 draft where it's Strasburg, Mike Trout, and Zach Wheeler. Right? Like, not every draft has those blue chip guys you can just lean on right away.
Speaking of the ACC, how many top overall seeds do do you see we getting for our viewers out there? There's 16 number 1 seeds, but 8 national seeds. So how many national seeds do you think the ACC can get, or top overall 16 seeds we could number 1 seeds?
In terms of teams, there's about 10 projected to make the tournament of all the 64. From a hosting standpoint, and this will be announced Monday. So Memorial Day is like a baseball fan's holiday. One, you get afternoon MLB baseball, and then around 1 o'clock, they do the selection show for the colleges. North Carolina is a presumed host. They have a unique roster because they're old school. It's pitching driven. This is not an offense that's going to drive the ball out of the park, but they're fundamental. They have a Division III transfer, Alex Madera, who's their best player. And as a guy who played some junior college, like I appreciate the D3 JUCO guys who get that opportunity to shine at the highest level, and he's been great. Florida State will be a top 8 national seed, and that's where it gets interesting. You know, Clemson's on the border. They'll probably be a top 16, but in terms of top 8, a lot will depend on how they do this week, and if they can win the tournament, that'll be huge. And then Georgia Tech, I'm glad you mentioned them because I saw them in Durham, and Danny Hall, who's their coach, him and Paul Maneri, the 2 active winningest coaches in college. And you think college, okay, 50-game season times 38 years of coaching. That's the 4 decades that's allowed Danny Hall to be number 2 all-time in wins. They're a unique story because Georgia Tech, they had a series postponed. They had some weird schedule changes. They didn't play all the toughest teams, but they won the league. And there's something to say about that. They'll host, but I don't know if they'll be a legitimate top 8.
You can only beat the teams that are on your schedule. I mean, unfortunately, it's probably the same in college football. I'm not obviously, no, we do this college podcast and Warren Stad's on it with me. I'm not a fan of the playoff system. You know, I'm an SEC football guy. I'm like, the all other suck. But I'm like, at the end of the day, you can only, like, you can't predict who's going to be good that year. You can't predict. I'm like, hey, we're gonna take this Texas A&M. They're number 10. I'm like, by the time they play, they could be, you know, not good. So I mean, in that circumstance, I'm like, you can't really be like, at the end of the day, these are who we get selected, and we got to beat them. And in baseball, you can beat anybody on any given day. You know, it doesn't go that way. I know that because of my, you know, my baseball gambling track record's not too good.
Well, what's crazy if you want to bet on this, don't, because the College World Series is ridiculous. So Tennessee last year won the national title. They were the number 1 team, and you mentioned them playing Florida. That was the first time in 25 years that the top-ranked team won the whole tournament. So when you look at a college bracket, don't expect all top 8 national seeds to make the World Series, so 8 of them go. And then 2, don't expect the best-ranked team to actually win it. It's not like the NBA. Chaos and bracket combustion is totally normal.
Well, I mean, speaking of that, and going into the ACC, Mike Martin, who's probably one of the best college coaches we ever seen and a Florida State legend, how many years he was at Florida State, and he never won a title. You know, so, I mean, and he had some great Florida State teams. So
yeah, I was hoping his last year they could win it. You know, they made the World Series and they came up in the semifinals, so just short. But that would have been a storybook ending right there.
Well, I mean, let's move to a little mid-major. You covered American. You said you covered the Sun Belt. I mean, the American, we got right here down by me. We got US South Florida, but it's a little different. I mean, I always every year it's like top 16. Almost every year I see it's like East Carolina gets a number 1 overall seed or top 16 seed, and they end up losing in Greenville, correct?
Yeah, no, it's crazy. So East Carolina, like you mentioned, they've hosted for the last 6 regionals. They have great baseball tradition. And this is a conference that, let's go back 3 years, had Houston in the league, Cincinnati, Central Florida, and and BYU. So like that congregation of talent from a baseball standpoint, that league was the best mid-major league in the country. It's fallen a little bit. You know, programs leave. They've added some programs. But this year, and this UTSA team they have that's right now 22nd in the country, they're really good. And they have another D2 All-American transfer. His name's Trey Lytle. He's probably 5'8", listed 5'10". He's their best hitter, and he hits 400. It's not a guy who hits a ton of power, 8 or 9 home runs. but they pitch it. They play defense. They're fundamental. They're not a team that walks out there like, oh, that's the biggest team in the country. They're not. But now they've won 43 games. So it's like those are the stories I love because those teams always cause trouble in a regional somewhere. They're not the best team, but they're the best coached.
I mean, UTSA, you would think the amount of, obviously the amount of baseball talent at the high school and junior college level in Florida, California, and Texas, you would think that they would be, able to succeed earlier. But, I mean, I haven't really heard of UTSA. I mean, I've heard of them because I coached and I love college baseball. But I've never really heard them on the national level until this year. And speaking of that second team, which is kind of in your neck of the woods there, who's number 2 in the American, Charlotte's a pretty new program. Do we see them getting in?
So they have an ace who was the pitcher of the year in the conference. And so Blake Gillespie, I want to pull up his numbers. In 100 innings, he had 131 strikeouts, which that K to walk ratio is insane. I don't care what level. He finished the year with 4 losses and allowed no more than 3 runs in any of those losses. So that's a guy who will be up for pitcher of the year in the country type of honors. It's hard at the mid-major level to win national pitcher of the year. It just doesn't happen that way, but he has all the tools. And when you're like, what team from this league do I not want to play in a region? It's that one because of Gillespie and because he's one of the best pitchers, right? And baseball as well as anybody. Like, if you have 2 aces in a series, it's best out of 3. You don't play 7 games in college. It's a 3-game series. So if you have 2 legitimate arms, you can win any weekend.
But I mean, as we've seen in college baseball in the past, I mean, like, you could throw in a random bullpen guy who's barely getting time. With South Carolina did it, 2009, and he never heard of him ever. I can't even remember his name, the lefty from South Carolina. But he went 2 years with South Carolina. They went back to back. After those 2 years, you never heard about the kid ever again. But, I mean, I know because I'm a University of Arizona guy, so
yeah.
10, 11, I think it was. Something like that.
Right, and then 5 years later, you guys lost to Coastal Carolina, speaking of mid-majors.
I was at that day at ABCA, which is American Baseball Coaching Association, was at the Anaheim Convention Center. So when I was at Orange Lutheran, we went, and Jay Johnson was the first guy to speak in the morning on Friday, and then I can't remember, the Coastal Carolina coach spoke last on that day. And like the first thing he says, he's like, "Hey, this is great. I'm here, but I'd rather be speaking last." But I mean, we got you covering a little Sun Belt. Who's the team in the Sun Belt we see that's kind of like the front runner right now?
Yeah, so you mentioned that Coastal program. They joined the Sun Belt a handful of years ago, and it's neat. So Garrett Gilmore was the coach. He retired. And his assistant, Kevin Schnall, has taken over this year. They've won 45 games. And they're back. They just swept Clemson in a series. They beat Wake Forest. They have all these quality wins. And they play in a really cool ballpark. It has the beach vibes of Myrtle Beach. They set up the lawn chairs in the outfield. They have fireworks that go off after home runs. Like, it's a good college atmosphere. And ever since they won the national title, they've invested money, and they have a beautiful ballpark. It's a minor league level park. And with them right now, their RPI, which is their strength of schedule and all that, is 10th in the country. So they're most likely not only going to host, but be a possible top 8 seed, which would be incredible for a mid-major. There's 2 other programs to watch in that league. One is Southern Miss, who used to dominate Conference USA. And people may not know, okay, what's Southern Miss baseball? They're probably the best program to not make Omaha in the country. Like, they are year after year, 40-plus wins, very consistent, great pitching. And right now they're 42-13. So they'll probably get into the tournament. And then Troy, the Troy Trojans, they lead the country in doubles. They hit the you-know-what out of the ball. They don't pitch it great, but they've won almost 40 games. They're going to be a bubble team, kind of like Miami and others. So maybe a third gets in. But that's a league where in the past it's been a one team gets in kind of conference. So for them to get 3 in, and I guess obviously someone could win the conference tournament and get hot, but I would expect Coastal or Southern Miss to win that tournament. And if not, then probably a third team gets in.
I mean, Coastal, if you don't follow college baseball, you probably never heard of Coastal Carolina. My sister had a former coworker She was like, I went to Coastal Carolina. I'm like, oh, the Chanticleers. She's like, what the hell? I'm like, I watch college baseball. Southern Miss, which is great. You know, we got Alex Baum who went to Southern Miss. So I mean that's great, but and Troy's been a consistent participant in the making a regional. Have they ever got out of it? I mean, I haven't gone back that far, but in recent memory, not. So I mean, you get some good teams, but Coastal Carolina, Southern Mississippi, some really good teams. But let's go to the baseball powerhouse. That's what I'm watching right now.
God's country.
The SEC. I mean, it is just absolutely nuts. I mean, and I'm looking forward to tomorrow, 4 p.m. Eastern, Texas, Tennessee. Oh my! But little side note, I coached my first year after college. I coached at Orange Lutheran. The head coach of the varsity team was Eric Borba. He had his 10-year-old son used to come to baseball practice all the time and just throw around with the guys. He's now the starting third baseman at University of Texas, Casey Borba.
Oh my God!
And I remember, he was, little 4'5" kid. I don't know how big he's huge now. I'm like, how the hell did you get this big? Your dad's not that big. But now he's the starting third baseman. But I mean, going to the SEC, do we see a surprise team winning this conference tournament in Hoover?
You ask a great question, because right now, so there's 16 teams in the SEC, just for people who aren't familiar. There's 2 of them that are terrible, South Carolina and Missouri. All the other 14 will make the NCAA tournament, and probably 10 of them will host. So to your earlier point, like, this is a league where anybody is good enough to win it. Tennessee, who was the number 1 team in the country entering the year, is 16-14 in the conference. So they're basically 500. And the fact that they're probably a top 15 team in the country and they're barely above 500 in a loaded league. I love what Coach Schlossnagle does at Texas, and you bring up a good point with that great story about Olu. Arkansas is always really good. LSU, they don't have the firepower of the year they won the national title, but they're still elite offensively. And then a team like Georgia, what Coach Johnson's done down there, second year at Georgia. They were an 8 seed last year, lost in a super, which is called the second round, the super regionals. I think Georgia's dangerous in that tournament. Hoover's interesting because it's a unique minor league ballpark. It has a lot of history, but those fans, like, they pack it out. The ACC tournament, no offense, but outside of the Carolina teams, doesn't draw very well. But that SEC tournament, they get 10,000 every night.
I ended up doing a senior year of college, did a mission trip to Puerto Rico where the guys taught baseball and the ladies taught volleyball. And one of the guys there was from Louisiana Lafayette, and that's the year they ended up making it to the super regionals, got really good. Went like first year, they were like, oh, Lafayette's really starting to get really good. But he goes, we're throwing. He's like, hey, I got to throw. Let's throw. So we're throwing. We're just talking. He's like, we're going to play a Wednesday series at LSU. And he goes, our coach just blaring music the whole time. He's like, I know it's a Wednesday series, but there's going to be about 15,000 people there. So you better get ready. They pack out the box for sure.
Yeah, that sport is nuts. And I'm glad, too, because the SEC, obviously a football power. We saw this year in the NCAA tournament with Florida and what Auburn was able to do. Like, that's a great basketball conference. But in terms of overall dominance, the SEC with baseball may be the most dominant in baseball. And you could pick 1 through 10, and I could make a case for why all those teams win the national title. I'm still in love with what Texas can do because of the firepower, even though they're throwing freshman All-Americans right now. They don't have a ton of veterans in their pitching. But, man, you have to, like, blindfold me and pin the tail on a donkey to pick who'd actually win the NCAA tournament from that SEC conference.
100%. I mean, you got if you don't follow college baseball, you got Vanderbilt, which Tim Corbin does. I mean, a phenomenal job there, but that's not a sports school at any imagine besides baseball. But basketball did a little something this year, but finally, I mean, and Arkansas, I've always been called crazy. I'm like, dude, I want to go to Fayetteville. I want to go to a game at Baum. People are like, why the hell you want to go to Arkansas? I'm like, just go watch a game at Baum Stadium and you'll get it, because that place is a party. And talk about packed out. that place is packed out every time they play. But I mean, yeah, I couldn't pick a winner for this tournament.
Well, think about, so for some SEC perspective, Ole Miss, who this year has a solid team, they'll make the tournament. They made it 3 years ago as the last team in, right? And a lot of times in basketball and baseball, they show a graphic like who just missed, who just made it. They were the last team in. Their coach was on the hot seat, and they win the national title as the team that, quote unquote, shouldn't have made the tournament. Florida this past year, the last team in. They go to the national final. Like sometimes it's not how you get in, it's just that you get in, and then you try to win from there.
And Mississippi State the year after too. Was it Jake Mangum, their center fielder? I loved him because I mean he wasn't big, he didn't really do anything like amazing. He just played the right way. I mean, and they weren't projected to win either. But I mean, you've covered a little SEC. Who's a couple names we could see maybe this year in the draft that getting drafted pretty high that might be able to make an impact like we might see with Christian Moore, who just got called up to AAA, who was a dude at Tennessee, excuse me.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm glad you mentioned that because Liam Doyle's the next. Tennessee's like an arm farm of development. Chase Burns comes to mind as probably their most prolific arm, but Doyle is the pitcher of the year in the league, and he can touch 98. And then scouts go, oh man, and that slot machine thing starts going in their eyes because they're, how much money do we have to pay him? He's an elite arm. He'll be really good. I think from a position player standpoint, it's interesting because it's a younger league this year, but State Alford of Georgia, he's a third baseman. He replaced Charlie Condon, and Charlie Condon was the National Player of the Year. He went to the Rockies. He's in their minor league system right now. Alford's been just as good, another 15 home run type of year. And I really like, sometimes I like quirky guys. A pitcher named Zach Root out of Arkansas. Doesn't throw very hard. Lefty with a lot of spin and movement, but he came from a mid-major and was first team All-SEC, right? So it's not just a league that recruits the five-star kids, but there's guys that can make a difference that may not go to the pros necessarily in Root's case, but there's a lot of talent with Doyle. You'll see him in a big league roster soon.
I don't really know now. Watching a lot more base. I mean, I watch a lot of MLB. I'm watching even more than ever doing this, but just because I like the guys who are the Greg Maddux mold. I'm like, they're a little more nifty. They don't blow out of the water. But and obviously, you see now, I think this is the reason we're probably having more Tommy Johns and injuries to arms. These kids do like what? Oh, who was the Angels guy who just went down from Tennessee?
Oh, Ben Joyce.
Joyce. I mean, he throws 106. How are you not going to have an arm injury throwing 106? You're putting baseball's not a natural throwing motion, anyways. But I mean, Like you said, you hit it on the nail. I mean, we're seeing so many SEC guys who are obviously Paul Skeens, but Dylan Cruz, Heston Kjerstad. I know we got some Orioles people, and now I'm back on Twitter. I see them all like, Kjerstad this, but I'm like, he was a dude at Arkansas his freshman year. So, I mean, you're seeing these SEC guys get drafted, and they're starting to make impacts and quickly on MLB rosters.
Let me give you one more name. Now, he's an underclassman. So in baseball, you have to stay 3 years in college. It's a funny name, but it's actually true. Justin LeBron. He's a shortstop for Alabama. Yeah. Has an NBA tie there with LeBron, but he'll be draft eligible next year. He's an All-American as a freshman. So he's the player you say, hey, who's good for like the 27 draft, maybe the 28 draft? LeBron's a guy that, I mean, one, he had 50-plus RBI, which in college is hard to do. That's about an RBI per game. And then two, he's a prolific defensive shortstop. So he's that next generation of draft picks.
Yeah, I've been hearing a lot about him. Speaking of, you brought up Chase Burns, who we could end up seeing this year, and I'm kind of rooting for him. He was probably kicking himself in the ass when he left Tennessee to go to Wake Forest. I'm like, I leave Tennessee and now they win it all. But one little more college note: you're doing the ACC, some SEC, you do some mid majors. What is the difference you're seeing from the level of play from the ACC and the SEC, which is NCAA powerhouse in baseball standards, to those, Americans in the Sun Belts?
It's the depth and quality of arms. So from a scoring standpoint, offensively, there are mid-major teams that can score 8 or 9 runs a game. And actually, the last 5 years, mid-major teams led the country in scoring. It's not your Tennessees or your Arkansas that are the most offensive, powerful teams. But when you look at the bullpen depth of these Power 4 programs, especially in the SEC, like Zach Root, for example, he's Arkansas's number 1 arm. He was East Carolina's number 2 arm the previous year, and they had Trey Savage, who then went to the Blue Jays, and he's climbing up their system. You know, that's where a lot of the Power 4s go, hey, here's your best pitcher at insert school here. We're going to pay him money and bring him in to be our 3rd or 4th best pitcher. And that's a luxury that you see a lot in tournament time. The amount of arms that can touch 95 plus out of a SEC or ACC bullpen, it's just different. Mid-majors have good front-end pitching. They have good lineups. They don't have necessarily that guy who can hit 10 home runs off the bench, where in the SEC, they can do that. And I think that's where the depth really plays out in the tournament setting.
I 100% agree. Definitely depth-wise on offensive. I mean, when Texas a couple of years ago, when they had Jared Jones, not the MLB Jared Jones, guy was sitting on – he might have been with LSU at that time.
Yeah.
I mean, he's sitting on their bench, and this guy's power, but he's not even sniffing it. And you notice we usually always get 1 or 2 mid-majors make the College World Series, but you notice the little drop-off from the 1 who's solid, and then it goes to 2, and you can see the little drop-off from that. So I 100%, that was a great point on your part. But we'll move to a little MLB. I know you're a Dodgers guy. I'm a Yankees guy. My dad's from New York, so I know people always ask me, it's like, why are you a Yankees guy? I'm like, hey, I feel there's 2 ways to be a fan. There's only two ways you can go with your teams that are in your hometown, which are the Dodgers, or you go with your family. I grew up in a New York household, minus the Knicks. But so I'm a diehard Yankees fan, and I know all my friends are Dodgers fans, and they're always like, you talk so much shit. Why don't you root for the Dodgers? I'm like, dude, I don't. Or they'll be like, I'm rooting against the Yankees. I'm like, I don't care. Like, talk shit back to me. I really don't. It doesn't bother me. At the end of the day, it's just sports. We're having fun. But you're a Dodgers guy. But we got a little jolt of life right off the bat. What is your opinion on these new torpedo bats?
The interesting part, because if I was like every person on social media, I was like, oh, that must be something new. And then you research that 5 teams last year in the big leagues had players use modified bats. And it's like, oh, wow, this is actually a common trend that's now hitting the mainstream. Now, the Yankees may have let the cat out of the bag by putting it on their broadcast. And, someone who does broadcast, if I saw that storyline, I'd want to tell that story too. So you're kind of caught in this weird quagmire of like, some teams don't want to reveal how they win games. But on the other hand, like the baseball world loves it. Scoring itself in baseball is down this year. I think that's a lot of due to the ball itself and not the bat. Home runs are down a little bit in terms of leader. I mean, Aaron Judge is still going to hit 50, but overall across the teams, I think the bats are any adjustment. This the same way the pitch clock adjusted the tempo that pitchers work with, the same way the pickoff rules lead to more stolen bases and the larger bags. Like all these rules will have little iterations to it. And we don't see teams massively spiking in home runs this year. So to me, the bat is just a personal preference thing.
I mean, first off, we've seen a lot of technology and changes in the pitching on the pitching side. This is the first time now on the MLB level we're starting to see it more on the offensive side. I know I got into a big argument with a former teammate of mine because he's like, "Oh, the Yankees just trying to cheat and get hits." He's a Dodgers fan, so most of my friends are Dodgers fans, anyways. He's like, that's BS. They're trying to. I'm like, it's not. And now we're seeing it. Now it's not like, hey, I hit the ball on the label, I'm going to get a base hit. It doesn't. You don't square it up. The bat's going to break. You see him hitting it off the end, and that thing shatters like hell. So I mean, but we're seeing it like once you do your research, like you said, this has been at the spring training level for years. And Giancarlo Stanton apparently used it last year. And then they asked him, why did no one notice? He's like, I was using a black bat. No one could see it.
Oh.
But I mean, it's fine. It's just shifting the barrel down a little bit to where the sweet spot's maybe a little lower which is it's fine. It's not it's not like, hey, I get jammed, I'm getting a base knock. So it's just, baseball's changing, and we finally seen a little on the offensive side. Quick before we jump into some of this rivalry week, we had a little news last week with Pete Rose and Shoeless Joe Jackson. I have changed my opinion on Pete Rose. I think Shoeless Joe Jackson, knowing a little, I would like to know a little more. I haven't done enough. I think he should get in. I think reading the minimal stuff I read on it, I'm like, oh, this guy was getting really jobbed. But do you think Pete Rose should get into the Hall of Fame with what he did in baseball?
That's tough, because I get the culture's changed, and I understand that he broke a rule of that time and not a rule of today. At the same time, the Hall of Fame is not the good guys club. It is an exhibition of baseball. It would be a shame to never know that Pete Rose will probably go all down as the all-time hits leader. I don't think that record will get passed anytime soon. At the same time, does he need a bust with his head in Cooperstown? I don't know. I think he needs to be in there in some way. I don't know if he needs to be voted in or just a part of the Hall of Fame. Same with Shoeless Joe Jackson. The Black Sox scandal of the early 1910s, like that in itself needs to be a story that's in the Hall of Fame. I just don't know if he, the player, needs to be a Hall of Fame player.
Yeah. I mean, before I really looked into it and going off, they have a committee that will vote. I think it's the summer of 27 or 26 that he has to get 12 out of 16. And going, listening more to the former players, you're like, we come in and the first thing they show you was at Rule 21. You're not allowed to gamble on baseball. It's the first thing he did. Unfortunately, he said he only gambled on the wins, which now going back, I'm like, that's kind of weird. How do you know you're going to win? But, I mean, I get it listening to the former players. They're like, hey, he broke a rule. I don't know if we can have him in. I know Frank Robinson, who's a former teammate of him, said if he's in the Hall of Fame, I'm never coming back.
Yeah.
So I've kind of changed. I mean, there's no doubt he was one of the greatest hitters, obviously, we've never seen. But because we're too young for that, but he's definitely one of the greatest hitters in baseball. But I don't know. But moving to the Dodgers, I know you're a Dodgers guy. You're from Southern California. That pitching staff beat to hell right now. Yeah, I mean, going to the spring training, I'm like, hey, they got 10 starting pitchers, and now we're going to openers for the Dodgers. What's your feeling right now with the Dodgers after they got swept by the Angels that we haven't seen since 2010?
Yeah, the Angels, it's interesting. The memes are always fun. It's like the Angels versus the Dodgers are a dragon, fully erupted and powerful. And then the Angels versus everybody else look like the worst team in baseball. The Dodgers are going through what they go through. They've had lulls even in their championship years. Like last year, they had a 6-game losing streak in the midst of their championship season. What worries me a little bit is, right from the start, Yamamoto, he was kind of your healthy arm. And then Blake Snell goes out after, I think, 1 start or 2 starts. Others have been in or out. Sasaki, the big Japanese signing, he looks like he'll probably throw late in the year, but he's going to miss a few months. Dustin May, who was the big redheaded stepchild arm that was kind of the backup 2 years ago, like he's battled injuries. Kershaw has just come back. I think last year they had to use an opener in 2 of the 5 Yankee games of that series. That might be the formula this year, which is not the ideal way to do it, but that's why their payroll is near $500 million, because they can stack players. I think what worries you is if a team is healthy, like the Phillies with their rotation with Nola and others, they're a team that could knock the Dodgers out in the playoffs.
If Nola figures it out, Wheeler, was it Luzardo? Yeah. You got Mick Abel just threw a gem the other day. I mean, you get Ranger Suarez, but I mean, yeah, and like baseball's not like we saw last year where it's 1 versus 1 going out in the World Series. Sometimes it's, hey, this hot wild card team makes it and ends up winning it all. Like we saw with the Nationals, you saw it with the Braves. But I mean, this is a question for always my Dodger fans. What's the first area you're identifying during the trade deadline? Is it third base because Muncy has been subpar offensively and he's not the best defensive third baseman? Is it outfield, or are you just pitching?
Yeah, pitching's one. Think about Tommy Edman and how they found him in the middle infield last year from the Cardinals. I think a player like that would be helpful, a utility infielder, especially this week when Chris Taylor, one of the heroes of yesteryear, gets released. Like, those type of guys are hard to replace. I love the Conforto signing. That was really big with Michael Conforto in the outfield. But you're right. I think pitching's number one. With Glasnow out and Blake Snell out and Kershaw just coming back, Shohei hasn't even pitched yet. If they can get one more starting pitcher, that would be huge.
I mean, you can never have enough pitching, but I mean, I could see the outfield too, because you can't. I mean, Conforto really hasn't panned out. Pages is playing, better of late, starting to hit, above what he was like 270 the last time. His defense is solid, but with Conforto there and Muncy just not getting it done, you can't have a guy who's a converted third baseman batting 180. I would like to, as a just a baseball fan, I'd like to see them get a shortstop. Just keep Mookie in the outfield. And I love Mookie Betts, honestly. Even though I hate the Dodgers, I love Mookie Betts. I cannot, as a pure baseball fan, I cannot like this guy. Just plays the right way, plays hard, is a class act. I mean, I would like to see him. I'm like, just keep him in the outfield. I know he's a competitor. So, he's like, hey, I started this. I'm going to be the best shortstop in the game. But I'd like to say, I know that's not going to happen, but, we'll see what that is. I thought maybe Rushing, who they called up, maybe get him some time in the outfield, because he's swinging it pretty good for a guy who just called up. But pitching's always something you always need, especially when it comes to October. So I think, I mean, I guess it's a plus in baseball. You don't really have a salary cap, especially for the Dodgers. But I mean, we had rivalry weekend this week. We had the Subway Series, which is probably the biggest Subway Series for the Yankees. It's always a big Subway Series for the Mets. They always want to be big brother. I think this week was a big Subway Series for the Yankees because of Juan Soto coming back. Personally, for me, I have no ill will against Juan Soto. Fine. You didn't owe the Yankees anything. You came there. You did what you were supposed to do in 1 year. We wouldn't have got to the World Series if it wasn't for Juan Soto. But for me, I looking as a guy who just loves baseball, I'm like, his defense isn't there. Baseball is probably, I mean, defense is the one thing. You could have unbelievable athletes. That World Series on a paper-to-paper base, the Yankees probably had more better players than the Dodgers did, but the Dodgers were fundamentally sound. On paper, it was an even series. If you watch, I'm like, this is a pretty even series. It was just the Dodgers were a fundamentally sound team. The Yankees were not. So that's why I wasn't going, off Soto. And I've also heard it was his family who said they didn't want him with the Yankees either. Now he looks miserable. But, I mean, going off the Yankees, they get 2 out of 3 from the Mets. Can you imagine what that rotation would be if they signed Soto, which Max Fried has the best ERA in baseball, has saved that rotation?
Those two teams are dangerous. And the Mets, obviously, because of their payroll, and the Yankees just because they find ways to win. And it's not the Yankees of the early 2000s with 4 elite Hall of Fame players, but they're dominant. I love, too, like, I'm looking at the rivalry weekend series names here. The Citrus Series, obviously the Marlins and the Rays down the road there with you guys. The Lone Star Series, where Texas is starting to find its form again. The Freeway Series was great because the Angels, like you said, they came out and just dominated that weekend. That was very impressive with Mike Trout still hurt. And then Baltimore, what a weird start to their year. They had World Series aspirations, fired their coach 2 months in, and now a team like that's got to hit the reset button with a team that has Gunnar Henderson. Like, who would have thought that, Yeah.
Gunnar Henderson, you got Jackson Holliday, who's looking like he's turned it on, who a name to watch is Ethan Holliday, who could be he'll be a top 5 pick, maybe number 1 this year. Matt Holliday's youngest son, so Jackson Holliday's brother. But I mean, I didn't think I'm a big Heston Kjerstad guy, just being from Arkansas. I'm like, this guy's going to be the dude. He's going to be good. He's going to be a good outfielder. Has not panned out. Rutschman has really started taking a little dip for them. I don't know why, especially in the Orioles side. I'm like, you go all in last year for Corbin Burns. I'm like, you lose him this year. You don't identify pitching at all. And the pitching staff on the Orioles side has not done anything. I know I was on Twitter when I scouted. I got off of it. Unfortunately, Twitter's kind of a cesspool, or X now. I kind of had to get off for a little bit. I'm like, I'm done with it. But I know they're all yelling, why'd we get rid of Kyle Stowers? Because he's tearing it up down here in Miami. Who was another great college baseball guy at University of Stanford. But going on, my opinion, I never wanted Soto back, not just because of the money, just because of the defense was there. I like what the Yankees did when they added Cody Bellinger, who even when he was batting .210, he was still finding a way to impact the game, and his defense in center field is phenomenal. I love what they did with Goldschmidt. Do I know if they make the World Series this year? I don't know. The pitching staff minus Max Fried has looked much better of late. But, Max Fried has had some injury history in his career, and it will happen. Injuries, that's going to happen sometime this year. He will go down. So, but I don't know. I mean, I would love to see. It'd be very painful for me, very hard to watch another Yankees-Dodgers World Series because that wasn't easy to watch. But that's probably why baseball loved it, because those are two of the biggest media markets in the United States.
They're my two favorites. Once again, I think there'll be great chances to win it.
I mean, the AL, I think, is a kind of toss-up. The NL is too, but the NL is just way deeper. Where you look at the NL West, you have the Diamondbacks who are sitting down there in fourth, and they could easily make some serious noise in October. You have the Giants, who nobody would have guessed the Giants be this good at the beginning of the year. The NL West is like murderer's row right now with teams. But I mean, we're gonna have going into some trade deadline players. We'll get there at some point, but it's not that close. But obviously, you think teams are going to start jumping in it? Because I see that pitching market getting pretty hotly contested. Do you think teams are going to start jumping in quick to make a move in that starting pitcher market?
With the combo of that and then post waiver wire combined with added wild card, I think some teams like the Tigers will be really aggressive this year, trying to bolster their staff. And I think a team like Minnesota, who won 9 straight, I don't know if they've kept their win streak, but they had like a 9-game winning streak. Teams like that in the Central the Cubs may try to add an arm. Teams that are on the edge of being really good would probably take a chance.
Yeah. I mean, the Tigers, best record in baseball right now, which is, phenomenal. But I see that market getting hotly contested, and there's guys I was identifying that could not even be on the market, such as Minnesota, who got really hot really late, or St. Louis. The Cardinals are playing great baseball right now. They got a lot of high, Nolan Arenado, obviously, Sonny Gray, Eric Fetty. Who would probably be on the trade market? But I'm like, they're right there in the wild card, maybe even could win the Central. Do you trade these guys? Because we got some really good young players in the system. But, I mean, I could see some guys jumping quick, maybe jumping on some Marlins players. Obviously, Alcantara, even though he has not looked good this year coming back so far. But I could see, like, hey, we got to make a move now because there's going to be a heavy market for that. Like you said, with the added wild card, but there's so many teams that are competitive.
Yeah, it's a great time of year right now, that's for sure.
Oh yeah. Well, Evan, I want to thank you for coming on. It was great to have you to talk some MLB, talk some college baseball. You're always welcome back, dude. Evan, it was great to have you on. I really appreciate it. My second interview had some guests on. Joe came on, Pete came on, but second guy in baseball. I had a Long Beach State guy on. I'm really glad. Randomly, I'm like, I'll reach out to Evan. Maybe he wants to come on. The worst thing he can say is no. So, but I'm really glad you're on. You're always welcome on if you have time. While wrapping up, what's your schedule looking like in the summer for sports? Because I know it's slowing down a little bit. You did say summer league baseball. What's it like for the summer and into the fall months for you with broadcasting?
Yeah, good point. So it definitely slows down. It'll pick up a lot in August for me personally. I do some stuff with ESPN Ocho Day, which is like a fun, all different type of sport thing. So that's a little bit of early August, and then a lot of the collegiate stuff will start again like mid-August. That's when a lot of the schools come back to work.
Well, Evan, it was great. Thank you. As always, thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. I hope you had fun. It's always, for me, it's always fun just talking baseball. And I do this by myself, so sometimes it's nice to have someone else to talk to. So I'm not talking to myself for an hour.
Yeah, thanks, Russ. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, thank you. Everybody please remember, like, comment, and subscribe. I'm Russ Morgan here with Evan Budrovich. This is On Deck here on FTSN. You guys have a great night.